But the first 2 years, really the first 3 years that I was in this location working, we did experience growth. And so this is the important thing you have to know is good to great, because good things can happen to companies that are not doing great things. It absolutely can happen. And so something I wrote down, chaos exists where strategy doesn't. And I was experiencing chaos in my business because growth was happening. And if you're on the outside looking in, you can see sales growing. You can see there's more revenue, coming to the bottom line. We're adding employees. And so in one metric, you could think, oh man, they're achieving so much success. So many great things are happening. But internally, there was chaos. There was no strategy. There was no stability to what we're doing. And so we are just a mess at this point. A lot of great things happening, but we are a mess. And then I came back to these principles we're going to talk about today. It took over 2 years for me to come back to these principles because I kind of forgot about them. I just started running my business, and then I started saying overgrowing sales. So things are great, but really they were just good. And then because we didn't move forward, it became chaotic. And I'm going to read one more note here. It says, as a leader, you have to choose to see the future and create a vision. Or you're choosing chaos and potentially failure. You are making a choice whether you realize it or not. If you are not choosing to invest in strategy and these principles we're going to discuss today, then eventually you are choosing potentially chaos, potentially failure in what you're doing. And so fast forward, so those first 3 years were challenging, chaotic, but we got these things in order. And even the years prior started working. And now in the past 2 years, we hit our catalyst. We hit our catalyst in sales and profits. We've had our best year despite a pandemic. I have my best team. We're doing our best work collectively. I have the best leaders in my business. And so the important thing is understanding that it didn't happen because I snapped my fingers. We are here because of the investment of choosing if you get this book, if you have access to this book, one of those chapters is confronting or facing the brutal facts. We had to face some brutal facts in this business of what we were doing, where we were going, the chaos we were creating, not choosing to initially, but we were inadvertently choosing to create that chaos. Turning that corner has been wonderful. And now we're in a good position, but that's where those other books come into play that Mark mentioned. The mighty can fall. So that's not when you get lazy. That's not when you get comfortable. When you hit your catalyst, that's when you got to do your best work. And that's when you got to dig in deeper. So we're going to talk a lot more about it. The very last thing I'm going to leave with you, and then I'll turn it back over to Mark. Strategy won't rid you of your problems. That's what you need to understand. It will not rid you of problems that you face, but at times it can calm the waves and create stability for you and your team. And that's an important facet. As you are growing, you may just be by yourself right now, or you may have one or two people in your organization, wherever you're at. Strategy doesn't mean you won't face problems. You can't avoid the problems, but it can calm the waves. And calming the waves in the midst of a storm is a big thing. We found that in the Bible, in the parable where Jesus, or not parable, but in the moment where Jesus calmed the waves for the disciples. And that can be a catalyst moment in itself. Okay, that's kind of the intro. Mark, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. That's amazing.
Great.
I mean, I'm sure that if you've got more that you want to add in, please continue to come back with it. Yeah.
I think I'll have more maybe in some of the content. I've got more stuff. I want to be mindful of our time.
Sure. Okay, thank you. And as we work through all of these principles, we want to share examples of how we've tried to apply them in One Rock from a ministry perspective, Chick-fil-A from a business perspective, but it's all about helping you to be able to start applying it to your particular context, whether that is business, church, nonprofit, whatever it is. We really think these same strategic principles can be so helpful across the board. Okay, so we're going to look at these 4 over the remainder of our time together. Now, I have to say the caveat in this, and it pains me to say it, I would love to be able to say that by the end of our time together, within 2 hours, you'll have an amazing, polished strategy for your organization, or maybe you'll have refined totally the existing one that you've got. But this does take time. And this always frustrates me because I'm a person that's like, no, come on, let's just work it out now. Let me spend an afternoon looking at this on my own, or let's just have a team meeting tomorrow and we'll spend the whole day on it and then we'll have nailed it. And that's the strategy. And Jim Collins consistently says these things do take time. Some of them, he says, it took organizations almost 3 years to be able to work through in a series of discussions what it was that they should have been doing. And then you look back from the outside, or you look back from, the success that you've had, and you think, oh, that was so obvious now from where I stand. But at the time, it's not obvious. Unfortunately, it's confusing. But we could do this, but we could do this. So what I'm saying is, I hope that each of these principles will really help you, but don't beat yourself up if by the end of the afternoon, you haven't written down the perfect answer to each of these 4 things. Hopefully you'll remember them. You can take the notes on what they are, continue to reflect on them each week, certainly each month, come back to it or discuss it as well with the other core people on your team. And you'll find over the months, maybe even over a couple of years, you'll start to implement and the strategy will become clearer. I wish it was faster, and sometimes it is, but often it's not. So with that caveat, let's get into the first one, which is from Built to Last: preserve the core and stimulate progress. Jim Collins talks about there is a difference between core values and purpose, which don't change for your organization, and strategies or goals, which change endlessly. And I know that one of my biggest frustrations as a leader can be when you're trying to work through, okay, what is the strategy? Where are we going? And then someone else comes in with a totally different idea and says, oh no, but why don't you stop doing that and do this? And even then, if other people get excited by that, yeah, you should totally do that. That's incredibly frustrating because you're trying to say, no, actually, I think this is where we're going as an organization. So, and this was revolutionary for me when I first read this. Jim Collins says, try and distinguish between what is core in your organization and does not change. And that should be stuff around your core values and your core purpose, saying this is who we are. This is why we exist. That remains, but then therefore understand, is everything else up for discussion? All of these other things can be changed because we constantly want to be, yes, remaining faithful to what is core, but stimulating progress and moving forward and pushing boundaries and trying new things, but within what we've discerned as our core. So, for example, for us at One Rock, people may say, as a nonprofit, you do lots of different things. So you do training, and you do coaching, and you've got blogs, and you're considering starting a podcast, and you've got books out. Some of those are biographies, and you're looking at writing other books. So what is it that unifies? You're doing all of these different things. Are you a training organization? Well, no. Are you a mentoring organization? Well, no. What is it that is core for us? It's those 4 streams that I explained at the beginning. Core for One Rock is we want to equip people in the areas of spiritual formation, discerning vision, leadership skills, global mission. That's core. That's who we are. The way in which we do that may well change over time and may well look different in different places around the world as we work in different areas or as we learn other new techniques. So we started out just doing training and put together a curriculum in those 4 core areas. And then we realized, okay, training has value, but it's not seeing the full life change we would love to see. So we started to write books and write biographies on leaders of the past and how they had lived out, again, those 4 principles. And then we started to explore coaching and mentoring and realized, hey, one-on-one conversations can really help someone to grow and change. But it's all, again, why do we have those one-to-one conversations? What are we discussing? Spiritual formation, discernment of vision, leadership skills, global mission. We've discerned what is our core purpose. It's helping people grow in those areas. And therefore, the other stuff that we do, they are just strategies or tactics, but we'll change them. If something comes along that we find is more effective than coaching in the ability to get people to grow, we will stop doing coaching and move on to this other new thing, because we're not wedded to coaching. We're wedded to those 4 curriculum streams. Yeah. If books stop being published, and maybe we see the beginnings of that with the internet. I don't think that's quite true. I think people will always like to have a physical book in their hand, but there will start to be more books are obviously available now online. Maybe people will want to access content more through PDFs or through articles rather than downloading full books. They would just get individual chapters. Well, we can adapt to that and respond because we're not wedded to books. We're not a publishing organization. Yes, we've published a couple of books, but because it's about the 4 streams. So you see, I found this incredibly liberating as a leader within an organization to be able to understand this is almost sacrosanct. This is core. This does not change. And therefore, these other things, yes, they can change. We can move with the times. We can run with that. I think that's essential for any organization, even for any team. At the moment, I lead a church plant of young adults in central London, and we've just brought in 2 new people onto the leadership team. And it makes it so much easier to have these conversations when we can say, okay, this is core to who we are. We're a young adult focused church in central London. So 3 core things about who we are. London, that's where we're based. Young adults, people aged 20 to 40, and Jesus. Actually trying to follow Jesus. That's what we're about. How we do that may well change, and then we can talk about different strategies. But I said, this is the core stuff that we're trying to achieve. Let's all agree that's the focus now. Okay, how we do that, there can be loads of creativity. Let's come up with different ideas in terms of that. This is also super helpful when it comes to franchising, if that's the word that you like to use, or engaging others onto your project, growing the organization so that others can start to run different things. Being able to discern what is core and what is not. So for example, again, at One Rock, we run a program called the One Rock Institute. It's run in different cities around the world, and it's training leaders to be able to live out those 4 streams. We've identified 3 core things in a One Rock Institute. If it's an institute, it needs to have the training content, it needs to have one-to-one coaching, and it needs to have a community element where we gather people together to support each other. How that looks can be different in different places. And this, again, is so liberating because then when we share this vision with different people around the world, they immediately know how much freedom they have to be able to change things, to adapt it, to fit their context, to bring their own passions into it, and actually what needs to remain core. So we're running an institute in partnership with Commerce Life in Rwanda. It looks different to how we do it here in London, but it's got the same 3 C's. It's content, coaching, and community, because that's core in our understanding of what an institute is. And the other stuff can change. When we share it with different people around the world, we've talked with partners in Atlanta about wanting to run an institute there. And often the question, the thing people will come back to you with is, well, you realize, Mark, it's going to look different here. Our context is different. We can't do it this way. We can't do online training. We want to gather people in person or whatever it is. And this gives me the freedom to be able to say, of course, whatever it needs to be to work in your context, that's fine, provided it's content, coaching, and community, and obviously in the 4 streams that One Rock is about. If you can keep that framework, yes, adapt it. You may want to do full days of training, or you may want to do evenings of training, or you may want to do weekends of training or online training. You may want to have people do coaching conversations every 2 weeks, or it may be every 4 weeks. That's fine. provided it's content coaching and community, you've got a huge amount of freedom to be able to work through how you apply that. This, for me, was so liberating as a leader when I understood this and working out what is core, what is sacrosanct. This does not change. And therefore, okay, everything else, yeah, it can change, provided we're trying to achieve this core, is so powerful when you're recruiting new people onto the team and sharing the vision and getting them excited, because there's nothing more frustrating for you or for them when they're coming up with ideas and you're saying, no, we can't do this because actually that's changing our core. But if they understand, aha, that's core, no, that's fine. But here is where we can adapt, where we can change things. And certainly when you're wanting to give people freedom to start running projects or franchising your business or growing in different areas, whatever that looks like in your context, how much freedom do you give people to change it and adapt it to whatever they want it to be? Well, this helps, because then you give them a framework. You can't change this because this is core. If you change this, it's no longer what we're essentially about. But these other things, yeah, we can continually change and improve. We just want to be the best we can be in that. So let's play with it. Definitely bring your ideas, bring your creativity, and help us to achieve this core. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I'm staring the showing screen. Oh, was that okay?
Yeah, that's me. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure, like, you're already highlighting some of this, but an important thing, this has been something that's been taught for a while, but I think a lot of people have not had to experience at such an intense moment as we have in the last 12 months for this. And I think it really, the way it's been said a lot of different ways. My favorite is Andy Stanley says, marry the mission and date the methods. And that's very much what you're saying. And that's what's allowing this to happen. And because when you are shipwrecked, when life comes at you really fast, when a pandemic happens, if you do not have a core, you can get lost really quick, very, very quickly. And it's allowed everything to shift because the same thing that's in the core is happening here. And so I just wanted to reiterate that, because this is, and what we're doing today is a prime example of how that works in action.
Totally. Thank you. No, that's really helpful. So what I want to do now is give a little bit of space for questions. If anyone has a question about this, let's spend 5 minutes addressing that. And then you're going to have some time to reflect on your own. How could this apply in your context? So I want to give space if people do have a question. I'm not asking for commentary on it or for how you might apply it yet. You'll have opportunity to share that in a moment. But if there are any questions that anyone has just about that principle, preserve the core, stimulate progress, please do. You can either ask it now in person, you can type it into the chat, and we'll spend some time addressing that before we give you time to reflect on it on your own. Actually, I should say, as we're going through, please do put things in the chat if you've got questions, because we'll take these breaks and be able to look at them. So we may not respond to it straight away, but we'll try and come back to it and look at it.
Mark, I can ask a good question that maybe
well, get the ball rolling for us.
Get us going here. So when we think about this, an important thing we talk about is core values. So what's the difference between core values and maybe rules and guidelines you're trying to follow in a business? I think those things can get muddied up just a little bit. You know, maybe it's, hey, we have a hard work ethic, or we believe in stewardship. And it's not that these things can't be values, but maybe sometimes they're not the values, but they're just part of the action that we do. And I think getting clear on core values can be really important, because in my own experience, part of the reason we experienced the chaos of not having the vision and strategy is because we were not clear on what the core was. And so that's because I was taking a lot of action words and trying to create a core with action words instead of values.
That is a great question. So let me flip that straight back to you, because I'm sure, having asked it, you've got an idea in your head. What would you suggest is the answer to that? And don't worry, for everyone else, I won't do this to all of you. If you ask a question, then we won't expect you to answer it. But because it's Caleb, I can flip it back to you.
So, my charger fell out. Sorry, I'll fix that in a second. So, great question, Mark. So, really, I think what I realize is you can feel the pressure of creating core values or creating this core, whatever you want to call it, because that's what other businesses may be doing, or someone tells you you have to have this. But this goes back to this whole idea of vision. And so for me, in the beginning, what our core sounded like was running a great restaurant and giving world-class service and exceptional food. And these are things that are great in a restaurant. They're important in a restaurant. I don't know about you guys, but when I go to a restaurant, I want good service. I want good food. I want it to be clean. I want a positive atmosphere. But where I was getting confused is those are indicators of a core that's in action. Those are not the actual core. Okay, so let me explain that again. Those are indicators of that something that your vision or your core is working. Those are not in itself a core, because your core values should actually drive the results. And so if you find your core results driven instead of purpose driven, because results driven means that there's an end goal, there's a moment, a benchmark, if you will. I think that's what can muddy it up. So what shifted for me was moving from exceptional service and clean restaurant and food and all these things, which are things I want. I want you to hear me. Those aren't things I want to go away. Those are things I want in my business. But what I found drove those things were communication, relationships, stewardship, and fun. When we did those things really well, when we focused on those things, great communication, I have a whole thing about that I'm not going to get into, and then building great relationships, both with our team and with our guests, stewarding what's entrusted to us. It's part of Chick-fil-A's core purpose of what God's entrusted to you. And so when something's entrusted to you, we take stewardship seriously, that we don't just take care of it. We try to leave it better than when it's actually given to us. And the last piece is fun. And fun is not about what's happening around you or what's happening to you. Fun is about what you bring, because I cannot control the actions of others. I cannot control the emotions of others. I cannot control anything about anyone else. I can only control myself. And so when I help my team understand by controlling yourself, by controlling yourself, being disciplined and bringing your best to work, then you're going to inspire those around you to bring their best to work. And I don't know about you guys, but a working environment when everyone's bringing their absolute best is a lot more fun to work in. It's a lot more positive to work in than those that are, it's mismanaged, it's mismatched. And so by doing those four things, those are our core. Part of that ties to this mission of building community. And building community is how we are reaching the town that I live in, Columbia, and also the employees that are working in my business, that we're building this community of leadership and community of service and servant leadership mindset, this whole thing that's happening. And I don't know if you noticed, but as we looked at the core, nothing has anything to do with chicken, with a clean restaurant, or any of those things. We're not talking about that in our core. But here's what's great. Because of that core, my restaurant's cleaner than it's ever been. Our service is better than it's ever been. Leadership is stronger and more stable than it's ever been, because those are the indicators, the things that allow us to see a core in action. Did I answer that okay?
Yeah, brilliant. And that then links, I think there's a question in the chat, Richard has put in, brilliant question. Core values and purpose being a constant, how do you nail them from the go? Can these evolve with times, context, and seasons? So my suggestion to that, and then Caleb, if you want to add on to this, please do, is that core values and purpose don't change. That's how you partly distinguish it. It's with times, content, season. Again, like Caleb has said, we're in a different season now with a global pandemic. Suddenly, we can't travel. We often can't even go outside of our front door. We're working from home. Restaurants clearly have had to adapt. Training ministries have had to adapt. Businesses have had to adapt. But our core purposes and values haven't. For One Rock, for Chick-fil-A, our values have remained the same. Our purpose has remained the same. Just the way that we've delivered on that purpose has had to adapt. So I would say core values shouldn't adapt according to season. However, having said that, there's a place for discernment and working that through, and maybe as well, certainly if as a solo entrepreneur, you may begin with a less clear set of values. It's maybe further down the line that those things start to get added and refined or shaped, or maybe something gets added and something else gets taken away. So there is a place for revision, but it's only very occasional in a sense. It shouldn't be, okay, this crisis has hit, so therefore should we look at our values? No, that's the time to stand on your values and say, how do we change our practices, but keeping what we've discerned as core in terms of values and purpose.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the key points that is brought out in the book, Good to Great. If you get the pleasure of reading it, you will see that is a key indicator in many of these companies, is when most of them didn't have a story of just pure success. Most of them became great through a moment of turmoil and setback, because they had to stand on values when everything else was shaking around them. So I'll share a quick note with that. If you feel like your values are needing to change often, and by often I mean, more than, once every year to 2 years, then I think what you're really finding is that you have supplemented your value with methods instead of actual values. And so that core that we've been talking about, if you find that it's needing to change often to fit your needs, it's because you might have some things mismatched where it may be. And I think that's what happened in my business. I kept feeling like we needed to change. Oh, well, we were working on these values, but now I want to work on these values because we got a different problem. I was trying to change values to solve problems in my business that we were facing, whether it was trying to serve more customers or trying to manage more team members or develop more team members. And where I got it wrong is I was continually focused on the action and not on the actual core. And I had another leader speak into my life that helped me realize there was just this light bulb moment of like an aha moment of, oh my goodness, I have everything reversed. When I finally got it sorted, that was the beginning of change for my business.
Okay, so we need to move on. Let me go back to the screen. I want to give you time and 5 minutes for you to reflect personally. How does this apply to your context? Can you make a list of what is it that's core and never changes in your organization? That probably values, purpose, or maybe core strategies. What is it that is core to who you are? And then therefore, is everything else open to improvement? Where is it you want to constantly improve? Because that's how we stimulate progress. We don't just, preserve the core and remain doing that forever and become a great organization. No, there's going to have to be change and creativity and growth, progress. So what is it that's core for you? And then is genuinely everything else open to improvement? Let's spend 5 minutes on that. Just reflecting. I've got 5:16 on my watch, so 5:21. Let's come back, and then if anyone wants to share anything, that would be amazing to hear what you've discerned for your organization, or if there's any other Q&A that we want to do around that. But just take a few minutes to jot down what you know on that so far.
Mark, do you want to repeat that for Elvis? I think he was asking what was the question, or what you want us to do. Can you repeat that for him?
Let me unmute myself. Yeah, Elvis, if you missed that, what is it that's core within your organization and never changes in terms of values or purpose? That's first of all. And then the second question, so is everything else open to change and refinement and improvement for your organization? So just another minute on that, and then we'll come back, and if anyone wants to share, we can do. Okay. Let's come back. So this is the opportunity to share anything that you have discerned or written down in terms of your organization. That's really interesting for us to be able to know, yeah, what's been helpful and how you might be able to implement that. Anyone want to share anything? And if you want to share, if you put your video back on, that's really helpful as well. so that we can see you as well as hear you. Yeah, Gail, did you want to say?
This is El.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Brilliant. So yeah, Gail first, and then we'll come to Elvis as well.
All right. First of all, this is really a great opportunity, and I think it just come at a really timely season. I didn't mention it in the emails, but Joel also, I'm one of Joel's invitees. So I have this organization. Well, it's not an organization yet. So far, it's just a concept and a website. I'm a creative writer and storyteller, and ever since I gave my life to Christ, it's always been, I don't feel like, I know it's a calling to write stories that shine God's light. So it's more testimonials, human interest stories, stories that, you know, tell of how God might have gotten someone or something from point A to point B, how he has healed people, how he has basically all his marvelous works. And the more I've been writing these stories of the past 3 years, it looks like, you know, I keep getting better, more ideas, and kind of like a bigger vision. This is turning to like compilations, which I can get from about marriages, from like married couples who have gone through some things and things like that. So right now, learning about the core values and purpose, just like to share some of the 3 that just came to mind, and I believe there's more room. I've realized it's one of the number 1 is basically being mad. It's called Mad Words, stories that make a difference. The first and foremost core values, it being Christ-centered. Christ-centered, basically looking to Christ for every, like, to him as you know, the foundation of everything. So we'll talk honesty, we'll talk, you know, all of God's principles. The main goal to point people to God through stories. So another core value I see is stories, but it's all about stories, nonfiction, real life stories. And something I also got from Caleb, stewardship of everybody who comes to my organization, making sure they leave, you know, better than they came, or just making sure they improve every day, be it even if it's just learning to write better every single day. Making sure we are, you know, growing in every aspect of our lives, not just coming to work, but also just growing as people together as an organization. So everything else that's open to improvement, you can just keep learning to write better, find better ways to tell stories. Yes, so far that's what I've come up with. And I'm open to hearing if there's a way I can improve that from you guys. Thank you.
Hey, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. And, you know, in a sense, these things, you know, is there a way to improve? You know, Jim Collins talks a lot about, it's not so much what are the right values, it's what are your values, and it's internalizing and realizing these are the things that God has placed on my heart, you know, and therefore if that's a reflection of your heart, then they're the right values, because that's what God has put in there. But yeah, thank you for sharing. That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay, and Elvis was going to share as well. Can we come to you, Elvis?
Yes. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the time. I've also been invited by Joel. So I've been part of a consulting company for the last 6 years. So I reflected more on my work experience and the values we had in the company, I wrote down a few that we used to talk about, and they are excellence, and then another value was unafraid to be honest, and yeah, family values. We treated each other as a family, and we're there for each other. Yeah, beyond what normal employees would do for each other. Yeah, so that was how that went, and then what was subject to change in delivering projects, we could use different methods to arrive at conclusions, or do research, use various methods, but we remained excellence was an expectation, was a value. Yeah, not being afraid to tell our clients what is not going to work. In my reflection, I also have a question. I don't know if that's okay. In my reflection, I realized sometimes the implementation part of it is very important, because when you say excellence, it feels broad. But yeah, that's a question I'm putting to you, if it's the right time to answer it. The importance of making sure the value is implemented.
Yeah, okay, so let me give my short response to that. I think it's essential that the values should be implemented if you've discerned them as values. And if you're working on your own, that's easier. As a group, it can be harder to create that culture, but that becomes so important. And actually, Chick-fil-A are experts on this in terms of how to create a culture that everyone then wants to conform with. The other advice I would give, though, on the values is, I think it's powerful to state them as one word, like as excellence, but then also to turn that into a sentence and give a description. What does that look like? So people know, okay, what does excellence mean? Does that mean we have to have the best equipment? Does that mean that we have to use the latest and best software? Does it mean that we have to bring our own personal best to it? However you define it, so that then other people, when they see or hear, okay, excellence is a value, they actually have an example of, and what does that look like? What is expected of me to hit that value?
Yeah. That's great. That's really great. I think it helps to bring that clarity. One last small question on that is, how many values? I was part of the team that came up with the values, and I remember created a big list, and was trying to. We gave 5 as a number to get to, but could you give guidance on the desirable number?
Mark, I could
yeah,
speak to some of that.
Go for it.
So I think it really is just like was stated before. It's not about what values you choose, it's about them being your values. I think the number is similar, but there's a caveat to it, and that's this. In my opinion, and in my experience, less is more, because you don't want to be, what we say here locally in Tennessee is, you don't want to be a mile wide, or in your terms, a kilometer wide and a centimeter deep. You want to be a centimeter wide or a meter wide and a kilometer deep, and because you're talking about wanting to have those values drive your organization. And if you have a broad list of values, can you really follow all of those things? That's what you have to ask yourself. Can we really do all of these things exceptionally well? And if the answer is not an overwhelming absolutely, then I would say that that's no longer a value as much as it is something that you may value alongside your core values. You know, I hear other people share values all the time that I think, oh, that would be really cool. But I go, you know what? It's those 4 core values in my business that drive my business. And if someone, you know, my buddy Daryl, who has been on many of these calls, one of his values was the word grit. And for them, grit meant how you respond to challenges and problems that are thrown your way. Do you have that tenacity, that ability to respond and overcome? Well, that's inspirational to me. I love that, but it's not my core value. It's something I want for my team, and I do want us to respond with grit, but I'm not teaching it as a core value. Instead, maybe it's supplemental to what I'm doing and saying, hey guys, this would also be good for you to have personally, but these are our core values. And then whatever Mark has to add to that.
I don't have anything to add. No, that's great. Thank you. Let me turn it over. Well, I just want to say actually thank you for the questions. This is great. Thank you again to Joel for recruiting some great people. I feel like, you know, it's what is it, the David's Mighty Men? Maybe it should become Joel's Mighty Men as the hand-picked people that he's involved in this program. So great to have you with us, both Gail and Elvis. Thank you for those questions and the input into that. Let me hand over to Caleb, and then he's going to take us through the next principle.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. Mark, you can go ahead and share the screen. So the next principle is going to be from the book Good to Great. And as we kind of stated, we're kind of cherry picking just some of the content because there's 9 chapters in the book, but this is one of the first. And the actual name of the chapter is First Who, Then What. And so we refer to this oftentimes as the bus principle. And so as you can see right there, it says, get the right people on the bus, sat in the right seats, and the wrong people off the bus, and then figure out where to drive it. This is the first who, then what. This, to me, seemed almost in conflict with my natural nature of how I function in life and how many people do, because I think oftentimes we get this idea, and it's probably ingrained to us through school. We go, okay, what do you want to do with your life? What career do you want to pick? Where do you want to go? What do you know, what is the question that we get faced with starting as a young adult and forward. But this is kind of flipping that around and saying, actually, who is more important than what? What's going to happen no matter, you know, it's going to happen. But who is going to make sure if it actually can happen or does happen? And so I think another way of looking at this is you can say what? You can say, I want to have a successful job. I want to make a certain income in my life. I want to live in a certain house. I want whatever things that you may want in your life, and that's okay. Or I want this ministry, or I want this influence, etc. But Truett Cathy used to say, the 3 things you've got to decide in this order are who's your master, then what's your mission, and then or master, mission, and then mate. And so as you kind of talk about this, even thinking about your personal life, for those of you that are married, who is more important than what? Who you marry is more important than what happens in your life, because if it's the right who, then whatever you face, you can do that together. You may face hardship financially, emotionally, life. Okay, who is more important than what? And it has to be in that order. It's not that what's not important, but who is most important as we think about priority. And so now we're thinking of business, organization, church, leadership teams. It goes all the way across the board. This applies everywhere you go. That's the wonderful thing. It doesn't matter if you have a team of 3 or a team of 300. Does not matter. The bus principle stands. And so understanding who is really important. And so one of the things that Jim Collins points out, he talks about level 5 management team or leadership team. And level 5, one of the other principles in the book is talking about the different levels of leadership. And John Maxwell has a book about levels of leadership, but really level 5 just signifies leaders that are emerging at the top level of their development, and they're beginning to do the things that they are wanting to do in their life. And so that management team, that leader in good to great companies said first who? They said, get the right people on the bus and build this in a superior executive team. Because guess what? If you have a superior team, then when a pandemic happens, you actually have the ability to pivot, to adapt, to possibly thrive, depending on what you're doing and depending on the challenge, to survive in general. An example of this in my business currently, last year during a pandemic, and I know it's different in Rwanda and even in different states in the United States, but one of the important things that happened early on was shutting down our dining room. The seating is shut down and my dining room is full. It's an important piece of my business. In fact, it's about 30% of my business, 30 to 40% of my business. So a little less than half, but that's what's happening inside. And now we said we have to close the doors. No one's allowed inside the building. So that's pretty challenging to take that 30 and 40% and think, what are we going to do? Are we just going to accept that we're going to have to function with less, or do we find another way? And the great thing is, because who was on my leadership team, they began thinking, they began praying, they began seeking out guidance, and they said, okay, how do we work through this? Mark, you can go to the next slide. And so as we kind of work through who is on the bus, so that's part of, I was discussing earlier about getting things situated. So I worked on this core. I created the core values, and that allowed me to know who needed to be on my bus. And so we're teaching this in an important order for you guys to understand. You can't know who needs to be on your bus if you don't know your core values of what you're trying, what you're aligned with, because who is most important. Importantly, they are aligned with how you are aligned. They believe in what you believe in. Because if you have people on your bus or in your organization or on your team, and you are saying, I value communication, relationships, stewardship, and fun, but they really don't value relationships. Sure, they have relationships, but they don't value relationships. And in fact, they don't even value communication. But they want to take care of what's entrusted to them. They want to be a good a steward, and they want to bring their best. They want to work hard, but they don't really want to value those other two things. They are not in alignment for what we're doing. They are not in true alignment of the team. And then they have to have a choice. So if we know the core, then we can know who needs to be on our bus. And it can be very evident after that is clear to us about our core purpose and our vision. Then it becomes very evident who should be on that bus with us or not. And the hardest part you will face, either in your business or on your team, is when you have to say goodbye to good talent, simply because of the fact of they are not who needs to be on your bus. And I had to do that in my own business. I had to, people who were talented in serving customers, people who were talented at Chick-fil-A, what we do, I had to say goodbye to, because they didn't value what we valued. And yes, that was challenging. Yes, that was an incredibly hard season to walk through. But who is on your bus, your stakeholders, supporters, volunteers, team members, whatever, they matter, because what you may lose today does not come at the expense of your future if you make the right choice. However, if you make the convenient choice and you say, well, they're talented, even though they don't align with what I believe and what this organization really believes at our core, yeah, they're kind of halfway there. They kind of get it, but they're not really there. What you are doing and essentially is setting your organization, your team up for failure, because at some point you're going to limit where you can go in that bus if the wrong people are on those seats. And so what role does each person play? Are they in their right seats? All those kind of things. And so a couple of principles I want to quickly go. I have just a couple more minutes here, it looks like. So in these organizations that Jim Collins, the top 15 that we talked about that actually went from good to great, they began actually doing some exceptional things in their industries. Those leaders began the transformation by getting the right people on the bus. So if you are stuck, or if you're even if you're not stuck, if you're just in the beginning stages, get this now if you can. But if you've already gone down the road, like me and my business, I'd already been in business for so many years before I really started figuring out, oh, I haven't been as focused on who as I thought I was. I've just been filling seats on my bus because they were empty. I need someone to make waffle fries. I need someone to be able to refresh beverages and take orders on a register. I need seats filled on my bus because I am wanting it to go somewhere. But I wasn't worried about who was sitting in the seat, and who is far more important than what. And so, let me make sure I got my note here. So look at this. The key point is this: who questions come before what decisions? Before vision and before strategy. So everything we're talking about, like what do I want to accomplish? Before organization structure, all those things. Before tactics, it's who then what. So if you start figuring out, I want individuals that are going to be passionate about my values. And then you start identifying those individuals. What's wonderful, what you see begin to unfold is that no matter what you are faced with, no matter the vision, no matter the challenge, it's not that your problems go away. We talked about that earlier. Your problems don't go away because you have strategy. But if you've got the right people on the bus while you're executing strategy, you can overcome the problems that you face. And you have confidence that you can overcome these problems, because when the right people are there, they're going to say, hey, we have this setback, but because we believe in these same values, we're going to move forward together. What can happen when you have the wrong people on the bus, when it's just talent and it's not alignment and values? You can disagree on how to approach these strategies, to approach these problems. And guess what? A team that is being tugged in two different directions, and I'm not talking about methods here because those change and we have to kind of work through that. I'm talking about actual values of what we are pursuing, right? If somebody is constantly telling the bus driver, no, turn here. No, turn over here. I know a different way. No, this is the way that we set out to go do. Well, I want to do it this way. You're not going to go anywhere very fast. The bus is going to get stuck. It's going to get lost. And you're going to find yourself in places you never thought you would be in. And that's the importance of this analogy. It's a wonderful analogy because the bus is the vehicle that takes you where you want to go. Okay, so here's some really, really important disciplines that I want to share, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up. So these are practical disciplines for rigorous people decisions. So these are people, when you are hiring, when you are inviting people into your organization, okay? When you are bringing all of that in, what's really important is when in doubt, don't hire. That's an important lesson I had to learn early on. If I'm not 100% sure this person belongs on my staff, if I'm not 100% sure that this person is aligned with me, if I am in doubt, then it has to be a no. It can't be a almost, it can't be a, yeah, we're close. It's either they are there or they are, then it has to be a no. And so there's a discipline in that, because guess what? We need seats filled on the bus, but keep looking. It says this, A company should limit its growth based on its ability to attract enough of the right people. Again, back in my experience, we were growing. The business was growing, sales were growing, we were expanding, but I didn't have the right people. You can grow without the right people, but there's chaos. There are consequences to growing with the wrong people. And what I learned is I would rather slowly grow or slow down, take a step back and then get the right people aligned to go forward than to move forward at all costs with the wrong people, because it's reckless. Okay, number 2, when you know you need to make a people change, act. All right, first be sure you don't simply have someone in the wrong seat. So here's an important thing. When you get people on your team, you may find frustrations, and that can happen. That's okay. Frustration, challenge, friction, that's part of growing. That's part of working through conflict. But you have to know the difference between having someone in the wrong seat. If you've given someone a responsibility that they're not capable of, so for me, I'm not much of a storyteller. If you said, Caleb, you are our chief storyteller, you're the person that we're relying on to come up with the creative stories, I'm going to frustrate you because can come up with a story, but it may not be very creative and it may not be what you're looking for. But I may be aligned with all these values and principles. And if you said, but Caleb, actually, I want you to work on leading our team that is doing the creative things and helping making sure they're efficient, well, I may be better positioned to actually execute what you need. So that's an important piece. Make sure you got the right person, not just the right person, but they're in the right seat. But guess what? If you start realizing they don't align with values, and it doesn't matter what seat they're in, it's really not a good fit. It's really easy as the boss to avoid that conflict and say, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings. Oh, I don't really want to end this relationship because it's going to hurt a little bit. But let me tell you, it's best for you, your organization, your team, and for them in the long term. If they do not belong on that bus, do not take them any further down that road. You have to act swiftly. The longer you wait, the worse the problem gets. Last but not least, number 3 for the discipline, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. Understand that opportunities versus problems. Your best people are going to maximize an opportunity. They're going to take it to the limit. They may take it farther than even you could take it. Okay. You have to tackle problems as a team. Somebody's got to deal with a problem. But if the best person you have at an opportunity, do not take someone from a great opportunity and stick them on a problem just because it's convenient. You got to put those people in the right spaces. So recapping, number 1, when in doubt, don't hire. When in doubt, don't hire. Number 2, when you need to make a people change, act. Number 3, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. Those are 3 disciplines that really help you once you figure out who, getting people on the right seat on the bus, moving forward as an organization. And that is important and when you are getting ready to execute your strategy and your vision. Okay, Mark, I think I may have went a couple minutes over, but I think that summed it up. Anything you want to add?
No, I'm good. Do you want to go into the reflection?
Yep, let's do that. Yeah, so I'd love for anyone, so not questions, is this reflection time we need to go into right now?
Oh, well, we could do questions. I'm just thinking on time, or we could do reflection and then have more time afterwards for the Q&A.
I like the idea. Let's do that. Let's do the reflection. So let's take maybe about 5 minutes for everyone, 4 or 5 minutes to really kind of process some of this stuff, and then bring your questions forward, and we'll go from there.
And so we've got suggested questions there. Hopefully you can see on the screen. The most helpful way that I try and apply that is who is on your bus? Who are the people that you've got on the team? We almost talk of it as a stakeholder map as well sometimes. Who is it that maybe is already part of the team, Or for me, from a non-profit perspective, it's then we've got trustees, or we've got key supporters, we've got key volunteers. It's who is it that's already involved? Are they, employed that you're working with or are passionate about? List them, and then for each of those people, so what role are they currently playing? But what are they most passionate about? Are they in the right seat? Should they be in a different seat? And then that final thing, because it's first who, then what? Okay, given those people that you've got, what does that tell you about maybe what direction you should be going in? And Jim Collins says this is so counterintuitive that normally leaders think, I need to figure out the direction that we're going in and then ask people to get on board. But he said what he found from the research is actually the great organizations, they get the right people on the bus, and then it's like, okay, so you're passionate about this. Oh, you're passionate about this. This tells us where we should be going. And thanks, I think it's Jen put that in the chat for you as well. So you've got the questions there.
Okay. I think we are right here on time, and we'll kind of get back into it. And I will recap. Jennifer, we captured the questions here, and then I'd love to hear your questions or thoughts. But who is on your bus? Who do you have on your team? Who are your key supporters, stakeholders, and volunteers? Those are really, really important questions. And I know I was teaching from that a little bit, but those are the reflective questions as well. What role do they play? And are they in the right seats? And what does this tell you about the direction of the bus, should drive them? So looking forward to hearing questions, thoughts, or feedback.
I think, do you want to go ahead, Richard? You've got your
Yeah.
hand up.
Sure. Thanks. I'm currently running a fast food business. We're 10 months in the business, and it's exciting to hear from people from Chick-fil-A and all of you who've been there before. My question, and thanks for the insight. My question is mainly on this early stage. As a startup, the tendency is to hire the people you can afford. So you're somewhere between raw talent and people you need to invest in more than maybe finished product, people with character and even the skill set. So how do you deal with that, and how do you extend grace but still be firm on the kind of people you want to attract in the long run?
What a wonderful question. Thanks for asking that. I think that is something that most business owners face at some point in their journey. So the important, as I understand your question, is basically sometimes the financial obligation and your ability to what you can pay for talent may limit that talent, and then that in turn can kind of make things challenging with this principle, because now we're talking about real life. Before we're talking about a principle of the bus, and you got to get the right people on the bus. And so how did I get so many years down the road with the wrong people on the bus? And I would tell you, some of it is because of those real life circumstances of facing that. But I will also encourage you in this: who is not tied to wage? And that's what you need to understand. Who is not tied to how much you are paying someone? Looking for these values is not tied to how much you're paying someone, but you have to make an equal commitment on this end. Because of your limitation on what you can pay for wages, what it may mean is who you are finding may be at a different starting line than you wished. And you talked about investment, right? So if you are getting a younger candidate in your business that is meeting the who criteria, but they're very limited on the skills, the talent piece for the seat on the bus, I think the important decision we have to make is weighing out investment versus output. We can't just invest in everyone and hope that everyone makes it, because the reality is we have only a certain amount of time, only a certain amount of energy. We have a business to run. So what you have to get good at is identifying the who, even in these smaller, younger stages of these individuals, these team members. And the way I compensated for that was the way that I spent time with them and the way that I developed them. I adjusted my development plan. I never adjusted my who plan. I never sacrificed the who plan. I adjusted my development plan. So I had to realign my expectations and realize that there needed to be development before I could really expect some of the results that I need in my business. But I think that's part of this whole principle of this book, applying these principles year after year after year. That's why we said it's not going to turn your business around in 90 days, because investment takes time. But years and years and years of investing is what eventually led to the growth and to the profitability and so on and so forth. I hope that answered your question. If I've missed anything, let me know.
Yeah, it made sense. I'm just wondering if that means then you just have to go by maybe a growth plan rather than always looking out for that right person that you won't necessarily be able to afford. Uh, the concern is also, in as much as the talent is at stake, sometimes even character is something that grows over time, and sometimes that ties with your values. So I'm wondering if there's a way to filter that from the get-go, or you just have to be patient.
That's another good question. The answer is yes. Sometimes it requires patience, and then sometimes you have to get better at figuring things out from the get-go. And that's, I mean, you in many ways just answered the question, because that's what's happened over time. The more experience I get as a leader and as a business owner in selecting talent and developing that talent, the longer I do that, the experience that I gain and the clearer my vision continues to be in my business, it allows me to be quicker at making that decision. So back to the bus principle, you've got to make quick people decisions. And so what I've learned is to be quicker at those decisions. So I give everyone the opportunity to improve. I give everyone the development plan, the same development plan, in fact, to or similar. Some of it's tailored to an individual where they're at, but they have similar resources to succeed. Where I've gotten quicker is when they choose not to respond to and utilize the resources, when they choose not to grow, when they choose not to develop. I get quicker at ending that relationship, at getting them off the bus. So if they're a little slow in development of character and skills, I can, as long as I'm seeing progress, I can have some grace for that to an extent. It's when I begin to not see progress, when I see that they have opportunity, they have energy, they have everything in front of them, and they're choosing not to do it, I get quicker at ending that relationship and moving those resources to someone who is hungry to grow on the bus. And so, yeah, and Richard, sometimes I get it. You got to have people working in your business, and it may cause you sometimes to you have to make a decision that keeps your business afloat. And I don't want to ignore that reality. We want this principle to work and to always work. But as business leaders, sometimes we need someone in the business to work and to be there, so we don't have to be there constantly. This is a progress, not a perfect model, not a perfect formula. What it takes is practice and getting better at it over time. And so if you don't get it right the first time, if you find some wrong people on the bus first time, all you do is get better at getting those people off and the right people on. And it takes time and time. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I could promise you I have a team of almost 100 people, and I promise you we have some people that probably don't belong on this bus somewhere. But because our culture and our core values are really strong, the vision gets clear, and I get better, and my team gets better, we get to move quicker at correcting those problems. I hope that helped.
Victor has a hand too.
Hello, I hope that gives me the go-ahead, Serge, to contribute. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I was just reflecting on the questions that are coming up, even from Richard, and reflecting back on the people in my team. And sometimes I realize that I am not able to hire some of these people. So I work with them mostly on a consultancy basis. Our organization, or our whatever we do, is architectural design and construction. So sometimes we do collaborations with other established firms or other consultants who come in for particular projects. So I take advantage of the fact that I can put them as part of my team, even though I'm not able to pay them, but for a particular project and for a certain season. But of course, they are always, in our database whenever I need to collaborate with a more senior, engineer, or a more senior architect. I know the person to go to. And then also we have a group. We also have an opening for I would say the young interns in our team. And one of the most important aspects of how we work is we really rely a lot on the interns from the university. They come in for training usually. And we have a collaboration also with a member of the faculty who is able to select from those interns in the university and be able to send to us people who we know will easily fit within our values. Although now Caleb probably would want to clarify this, because sometimes what I used to know is that probably when I clarify my values, then I can know who to put in the bus. But I think you mentioned sometimes that we need to know who should be in the bus first, even before, working out many other things, or maybe I did not get it right. So probably you will clarify whether I should have my values first, or our values in the team first worked out. And then we know when you're selecting who to be in the bus, who can fit within those values. And that's what I've been trying to do in our team, to get even the interns to be evaluated by some of our partners who are able then to second them to our organization, knowing very well that they will fit within the values of our organization. Thank you.
So I want to make sure did I miss any questions on that? Because it sounded like you are right on board with what we're doing. Did I miss a question on that?
Yeah, I think initially I thought that when you mentioned that it's important to, let me just get back to that it's good to know in the whole strategy of the bus to select first who, then what. And yes, and
yes.
this, when I'm selecting who, then I must have like a way of evaluating, because I have many choices. Then what are those things that I need to look out for when I'm selecting the who? Because I feel it's related to the what.
I see. Okay. I think that clarified it for me. So one of the most important things that I did when I discovered that I had a lot of the wrong who in my business, one of the first things that I did when I went back and I developed those core principles that you're talking about is we began to integrate those things in our interview process. So communication, relationship, stewardship, and fun. So what we began to do, if I ask somebody, do you think you're a good steward? What do you think the answer would probably be? Yes. They're going to tell you what you want to hear. They want the job. If you said, do you communicate well? Oh, absolutely. I communicate better than anyone I know. That's what they're going to tell you. Are you a hard worker? Absolutely. I'm the hardest worker I know. So what I had to learn to do in the interview process, because I'm sure this is the same way in Rwanda as it is in many places, multiple people are wanting these jobs. So how do you pick the right person? How do you find a who? Especially when you don't know them personally and you don't interact with them, so you can't see them on a daily basis. You begin to construct questions in your interview process. So for me, for instance, we'll pick communication. The question I may ask would be, how do you communicate with others? And so when you ask that question, it's an open-ended question, and they are forced. You didn't give them really, you didn't tell them how you want them to communicate or what your expectation of communication was. Instead, you said, how do you communicate with others? And that forces them to kind of think and respond and tell you what they're doing. And then you can evaluate and say, well, this, you know, they're going to tell you what's important to them in that moment. Or for stewardship, hey, can you tell me about a time when somebody has entrusted something to you and how did you handle it? You didn't say the word stewardship at all, but what you're trying to identify is, do they have that stewardship value in them naturally? Because here's another key thing that we probably haven't really discussed. What I've learned over time is if somebody has even the smallest inkling of a core value, I can develop it and grow it. But if they do not have that value naturally, there's a better chance that it may never exist. In my organization, hospitality is incredibly important. Relationships are important. If somebody is, if it becomes clear in an interview process that they do not value relationships, they do not want to work well with others. It's their way or the highway. They value themselves more than anyone else. They have a big ego, whatever the case may be. It is then that I have to make the quick people decision to say, nope, you can't get on the bus because that's not how we align our values. That's not how we do business. And I don't think I'm going to change your mind by hiring you. That person can change, but most people don't change just because they get a job. Most people choose to change on their own, and you can see it reflected in their answers. Does that make sense on the hiring process? So that's when Richard asked earlier, how do we get better? One of the best ways that we've gotten better is we don't invite people that we can clearly see from the get-go don't belong on the bus to get on that bus. That's the first and best way you can limit that process, is getting better at picking the right people for your team.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I add, Alan on the chat asked a question, which is kind of similar to that, I think, in terms of the values. Scroll down to this properly. How can you know that someone fits with your values and yet you haven't been with him or her for a long time? I guess that goes back to that interviewing thing. Are there any other creative ways, maybe Kelly, we can think of in terms of how can you know whether someone fits your values when you hardly know them?
The challenge of an interview is you are making your best guess on a very limited amount of information. That's the reality of it. When you are a business owner, you take risk whenever you hire someone. What you want to get better at is mitigating that risk. You want the risk to be lower. So you get better at asking questions. So really the best way that I have found to unfold this information when I don't know them is getting someone not to tell me about their philosophy, but their life experience. So again, I could say, what do you think about helping others? And they could tell me that they are all about charity work and working with other people. But instead, if I say, tell me about a time when you helped someone else, now they have to tell me a story when they actually did it. And I will know in that moment if they really did it or not. Someone can fabricate a story and they can fool you in that way, sure. But most people, if they are not already doing these things, will be caught off guard and will not be able to magically create this experience that you're looking for. Instead, they're going to go, well, you see, I believe in helping people. Yeah, I know. I've gathered that. But tell me about when you actually did it. And now you're positioning them to do that. Question, Jen?
Yeah, can I just, can I just add a Rwandan context to that maybe? Like 100% agree with what you're saying. I've been involved in some hiring at a school level here in Rwanda and in some other different places. And it's super, super important about hearing people's stories. And here in Rwanda, it's all about, you know, do you have the right paper? Can you answer these questions? But to get good at asking the right questions. So along with Caleb, you know, about, you know, you said, you know, can you share a story from your life? If you're if you're a pastor, if you're in a Christian NGO here, you don't want to ask them, do they believe in God? You don't want to ask them, you know, if they're a Christian. You don't want to ask any of those questions. You want to know how Jesus has impacted their life. What does that mean? How does that roll out in your job? How does following Jesus make you a better leader? How does following Jesus make you a better whatever storyteller, whatever that is? And so, because you want to get as close to the heart and as close to the soul of a person, because that's where their gifting and where their talent comes from. And the closer you can get to that in interviewing, that's when you're getting the right people on the bus. That's just my two cents. And you can do it here in Rwanda. Don't think that you're overstepping people's boundaries by going, oh, I can't ask that question. Well, if you want the right people on the bus, you have to ask those questions. And as Caleb already said, like you're only doing them a favor by not giving them the job if they're not the right person, right? So anyways, I'm done.
That's excellent, Jen. You summed it up perfectly.
Thank you, sir. I also have a question. I have one question. Yeah, it will sound like a funny question, but sometimes it happens to me in my organization. Can you hire someone? Can you bring someone on the bus in the wrong seat, knowing it, but because you want to help him and think that maybe you will make him the right person? Is this something that advisable? Thank you.
That's a wonderful question. That's when you let your heart get in the way of business. This is something I've personally had to overcome, because I am, as we've even discussed in other sessions, if you've been part of those, you know, leaders are results driven or oriented or relationship oriented. And I'm very relationship oriented. And that means I want to see the best in people. I want people to do well. I want the best for others. What I've learned is just because I want the best for others, that's not always what's best for them, because I don't always know what's best for them. God does. And if they're following God, then they will as well. But the other thing is this: it is a mistake to put someone in the wrong seat of the bus just because you want them to succeed, especially if you feel like they do not have the talent or the ability to perform in their role. You are setting them up for failure. And someone who is wanting to grow and succeed, what they need is opportunity in their sphere of expertise and abilities, not positions or seats on a bus they don't belong on. And that may be one of those things. You may have a heart to help them, and you may have to learn to separate and do that personally versus in your business. Because if they don't belong in your business, that doesn't mean you have to excommunicate them and never help them. It just means that you may not be helping them on that bus that you're on. And so I've had to do this personally. It's an interesting situation, but it's not very often, but there's been one or two in my experience that I've had to fire because they did not fit this organization. I had to let them go. They had to leave my business. But I've maintained a relationship with them since then, because they still want to learn how to lead. They still want to grow, and I still want to help them. They just didn't belong at Chick-fil-A, and they still don't belong at Chick-fil-A, but they're good people. Doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't make them a bad leader. They just didn't belong on the bus. I hope that answered your question.
Yes. QSA to have, QSA, please ask your question too.
Sure.
Yeah, if we could do this, maybe the final question, and then we'll need to take the break, I think, and move on. But yes, Q's has been waiting patiently, so please do go ahead.
All right, thank you. This is great, and my question, which goes to also contributing to what my fellows were talking about through experience with hiring, is really something very challenging. When you are a Christian, also you want to create that opportunity to someone to whom you are having empathy, and sometimes we are driven by empathy, but it becomes a challenge to manage that empathy and the work which is ahead of us. But with keeping that core values, it helps much if someone is really embracing the values we are having in the business. It gives much more chance to accommodate him within the bus. But the big challenge becomes when it's the first time to meet, and we are going to base on a very short time we spend with him on interviews. So my contribution to this could be, we have also a probation period, which can be which is a time we have to as leaders of the business, which has helped much in businesses and also in partnership, where we spend a limited time with someone, and we can say, okay, after 3 months or 2 months, we say, okay, let's do like this. Let's close this relationship, or we can clearly communicate and look at this. But also there is another key which you talk about, Caleb, like the abilities, which some of the business are using, have developed different tools on this, like Colby's. I don't know if you were about Colby scoring, and people are based on the abilities, how they fast finders, performers, all those tools people are trying to use, because this is a real challenge when we have to bring in people in the bus. So my question is always, as a Christian, because now I'm really happy because I joined this by invitation. I've been doing this kind of business and leadership trainings and coaching with, I can say, people who are not much committed to Jesus. But like the question Gilles raised about accommodating someone in the team, Judah was part of the team of Jesus' team, and he was a betrayer. And sometimes, because of the mission, the vision we have, I think we can accommodate a betrayer within the team, because the betrayer is going to take us to the right mission of the heart of the mission. Jesus came to die for our sins, and the betrayer also comes. So I don't know how to you manage it as a business and as a man of God, but that's a real challenge. And thank you.
It is. I think I understand what you're saying. Here's the important thing to look at that context of what you mentioned with Judas. In the beginning, Judas was not a bad fit. Judas made choices over time that began to steer him away from the values. And from what I can see and what I've read in the Word, Judas in the beginning was completely aligned as a disciple, but he made choices to leave. We're going to have that in our organizations. People, we can't, back to what I've said even in the beginning, we cannot control others. We cannot control their actions. We can only present them with opportunity and resources and invest in them. And Jesus invested in Judas, and he still betrayed him. And I have been betrayed many times in my business. It's frustrating, it's hurtful, but it's a risk you take as an entrepreneur. And if your goal is to never get betrayed, never to get hurt, then you will be very limited in your influence and impact in your business. So it's part of the deal.
Thank you, Caleb. I am going to suggest, I'm mindful of time, it's 4:30 and we've not yet had a break. So I'm going to suggest, can we do a 5-minute break? So if you need to go to the bathroom or get another drink, you can do. And because we've got lots of stuff that we would love to share, but we said we'd finish at, what is it, your time, at 7. Me and Caleb can stay on and we could go to 7:30 to continue covering in full the next 2 principles, I think. Is that fair, Caleb? But we understand if some people need to leave at 7, because that was the time that you had agreed to come to. So we'll take the 5-minute break and then we'll get into the hedgehog concept and cover the meat of that, so that you'll have that even if you need to leave at 7. But if you're able to stay on, we could go on to 7:30 to be able to do justice to the next 2 principles. Is that okay with Caleb and with Serge? That's my suggestion. Great. Okay, so let's do 5 minutes off and we'll come back at 25 minutes to. Okay, are people back? Or is it just me who is back? I'm talking to everybody.
I'm here. And Jennifer.
I'm here.
And I'm here.
Great.
We're back.
Okay.
Go back.
Mark, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Is that if you guys teach straight through your stuff, and then instead of breaking it into 2 chunks, that people write down their questions and we go to that at the end collectively, does that work?
We can do that. It's up to Caleb. It's his 2 chunks, but they kind of fit neatly together as well. So
I think we might lose. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Caleb.
No, you go ahead, Serge. No, I want to hear your point.
No, I was saying sometimes it's good to catch, you have a question and it's kind of burning, it's still fresh. And if you go, then something else might come and steal that up. I think we can go. If we don't finish, then we'll find another way, or people can stay who still have questions.
That was the challenge, is this material is so complex. I didn't want someone to lose their thought, but yeah, there's consequences either way you do it, I guess. All right, should we get started, or is most people? I know some people. I just saw on the chat, some people are having to leave, and then the questions asked, Mark, for those who leave at 7, is there a way to get the recording still? And I'm going to assume there's a yes to that.
yes, so we're recording. Well, I might have to edit some bits, but we'll put it up on YouTube and send people a link so they can access it if they've attended.
Great.
And I'll make sure that everybody who came today, for those of you who are on that got the link, not from Comeza Life, but from a friend, put your email into the chat so that I can mark it down and we'll make sure you get it. Okay. That'd be good. So if you didn't get a message from me, Jennifer, put your email in the chat and then we'll make sure you get the link to the video.
Great. Okay, Caleb, do you want me to share back again? And then it's over to you.
I am, I'm ready to go whenever you say go.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right, great. So I'll jump in here. So the next, I'm teaching. Okay, here we go. Yeah, you go ahead with the screen there. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to be talking about here is the hedgehog concept. And Mark actually asked me an interesting question earlier. Serge, maybe you're the best person to ask, but does Rwanda have hedgehogs?
I want to say yes, but I've never seen one.
Great. Mm-hmm. Well, I've only seen one at a zoo. They are not running rampant in Tennessee, but we're going to talk a little bit about this creature. It's called the Hedgehog Concept. So if some of you are unfamiliar with a hedgehog, you may be kind of questioning why would they pick such a unique creature for understanding all this. And so really they talk about this fox and they talk about a hedgehog and the two difference, the difference between these creatures. And the interesting thing here, I'm trying to find the little summary here, and I thought was really a great way to summarize it, and I think I did a bad job of marking it. So I will try to do a little bit of a summary here for you, and Mark, if I miss it, just please correct me here. So the question is are you a fox or a hedgehog? Because they both approach things differently. A fox is kind of has schemes. It's kind of sneaky. It's a scavenger. So it's finding ways. It's kind of trying to find tricks and workarounds of ways to get what it wants completed. And so it's going to try different things. It may sneak. It may kind of try to be in incognito or have some camouflage or whatever it may be. And so it's just constantly working on schemes and tricks. It relies on those things to do what it needs to do. Whereas a hedgehog is really good at one thing. And that one thing that it does exceptionally well. In fact, it's better than anything else at that one thing. And it's focused, it's doing that one thing, and that's it. And it ignores everything else in that moment. So without going too deep into that, because we are limited on time, how does that kind of apply in business? Well, when we begin thinking, we've got these core principles that we've already been working on, these core values. And so we're kind of understanding those values, and we're kind of starting to craft a little bit of a vision. But we've really done a good job of actually figuring out who belongs on our bus and what seat they belong in, right? It's not just who, but it's also where they're sitting at. And then we can decide on our what. And so as those things get going, when we start talking about our what, our hedgehog concept comes into play. And so many businesses, even if they get the right who, deciding on what can be tricky, because sometimes it's just your business idea. Sometimes it is what is popular, whatever the case may be. But a fox is going to approach it in such a way that says, how can we be convenient? How can we kind of, what all can we do to get what we want? And they're going to throw different methods, and they're going to throw different things out there and really say, hey, let's just try all these different things to see what we can get. Whereas a hedgehog kind of buckles down in the business world and says, okay, what am I best in the world at? That's the real question here. So one of the statements from the book says this: to go from good to great requires a deep understanding of three intersecting circles in this hedgehog concept. And so we can go a slide forward here, Mark. So we're talking about being the best in the world. So this is how we find that out. So here we go. Base organization strategy on the intersection of these three circles. So when we talk about being the best in the world, our strategy, what we're doing, really what you don't want to do is think about tricks and schemes and what can we kind of figure out what's just like, what's everyone else doing? What's everyone else doing that's finding success, and constantly looking out and about. Instead, you kind of want to look inward and say, okay, there's three important questions I need to answer to understand how I can be the best in the world at something. And really, it's these three circles right here. What can you be best in the world at? Number two, what are you passionate about? And number three, what drives your resource engine? And that little spot in the middle, and this is a Venn diagram here, so you can see there's just a little spot in the middle where all three of those circles intersect. And at that moment, that is when you can find your sweet spot as an organization, where you're headed, what you're doing. Because truthfully, if you only answer one of those questions, you're only solving part of the problem, right? Because I may have the people that I think that I need, the who's, and I think they're really talented, and we're really passionate about leadership development. Okay, now what? Or we're really passionate about IT, technical support. We really want to help people do that. Okay, now what? It's only part of the question that is answered at this point. And so now you have to kind of be looking at these other questions to help balance and complete the picture. All right, so what am I passionate about? What can I be the best in the world at? And so in my experience at Chick-fil-A, what can we be best in the world at? So for me, there's a lot of things that can maybe fit into that little, not a lot of things, excuse me, there's a few things that can fit into that tiny area. I think one of those is service and hospitality in my world. I think food is one of those things. And then I think development of building community fits right there in that middle section. I think we can be the best in the world at building community. I think we can be the best in the, or we can have these concepts here. And really, you're just kind of picking the ones. What is it? And so, for me, as I look at those things, those are still indicators of what we're doing. So, what's the real sweet spot in there for me? What's driving the resource engine? What can we be best in the world at, and what am I passionate about? And that's a hard question. So here's a little quote that you need to, this is what I would encourage you to write down. The key is to understand what your organization can be the best in the world at, and equally important, what it cannot be the best at, not what it wants to be the best at. The Hedgehog Concept is not a goal, strategy, or intention. It's an understanding. So something really important to understand here and capture. It's not what do we want to do alone. You could want it, but you have to face this brutal facts, this reality of what can we do, right? If I wanted to make chips for iPhones, some processing chips for iPhones, the reality is I own a restaurant that has a great chicken supply chain and product chain and customers that have a drive-through. And I decided that I wanted to do that. The reality is I cannot. I'm not positioned to do that. I'm not equipped to do that. I don't have education for that. And there's no way I can't be the best in the world at that. It's just impossible. And so you got to assess reality, right? I mean, I know that's kind of a crazy example, but that's kind of how it begins to work. And so again, we talk about the fox, right? So the fox is something that kind of oftentimes can try to catch the next trend or what's going here or there. Whereas the hedgehog says, hey, I'm sticking to this thing. And it's not that you're unwilling to change your methods. It's not that you're unwilling to change. It's the fact that you are so committed to what you're the best in the world at, that over time, that's what's going to drive everything. And so when you begin looking at that in your businesses, I got to find my note here. So the important thing is that, remember, this is not a goal, strategy, or intention. It's an understanding. It's the moment that you begin to realize what we're actually doing. So I'll tell you a little bit of a personal story with that. So what I realized we were actually doing, if you go back a little earlier in the conversation, we were talking about core values. And one thing I discovered in those core values is it had very little to do with chicken, even though I own a chicken restaurant that is serving customers chicken every day and lots of it. It had everything to do with values. And so even this hedgehog concept, the reality is, what are we really best in the world at? And so I kind of gave you those top three things. We're really good at food. We're really good at service and hospitality and development. But if I have to pick one, and I can't pick three, I can't pick five, I have to pick one, what I realized we're best in the world at Chick-fil-A in Columbia, at least in our world, maybe not the entire world, because there's some really good people doing what I'm about to tell you, is leadership development. How did I land there? Well, first and foremost, I'm deeply passionate about it. Not just passionate about leadership development. I have conviction around leadership development personally and professionally. I do it for myself, and I help offer that to others. It's something I can't escape. I can't stop thinking about it. It's something that if I'm not doing it, I'm going to feel unfulfilled. It's something I can't get out of my head. I am deeply passionate about leadership development. Well, guess what? What drives your resource engine? Well, it can be a lot of things. We could say sales. Sales do drive my resource engine, because if I'm not selling chicken to customers, I can be passionate about leadership development, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to put food on the table. So what drives your resource engine? What's constantly keeping things moving? What's going? And for us, it's those sales. But what is driving those sales? How are we getting better at sales? When I get better leaders in my business that are developing team members at a better rate with better quality, we are getting better at executing a sale. All right, we're quicker at moving someone through my drive-through. We have more ability to connect with the guests because we're coaching and we're helping people understand this mission of building community, because our leaders are understanding how to communicate and cast vision. Kind of important. And then you go back to that top one. What can you be best in the world at in that sweet spot? Well, I look at other businesses in my community. Some of them are choosing to look at leadership development. Most of them are not. Most of them are trying to find team members. Most of them are just trying to find someone that's a cashier or working in the drive-thru, or someone that can cook waffle fries or make a sandwich, whatever it may be. But you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for great leaders that can develop people that can do those things. And so this is the mindset shift, the paradigm shift for me, is when I realized that my goal was not to find someone to cook waffle fries. My goal, my Hedgehog concept, was to find and develop leaders better than anyone else, be the best in the world, and then empower those leaders to do everything else, to sell chicken, to develop people, to help train, to do all these things. And that's where I found what I'm best in the world at. It's not always going to be that way and be that simple for many, because it wasn't simple for me, because I was chasing so many other things. I was a fox. I was going, oh, well, we need to change up our service model, and that's what's going to make people like us more. Or it's almost became like I was chasing gimmicks. And now I don't chase gimmicks. We change our methods. We adapt how we serve our guests. I promise you, during a pandemic, you have to adapt very quickly. You have to be very nimble, because it is constantly changing. The CDC gives new guidelines. The World Health Organization gives new guidelines. Your local government gives guidelines. People have a fear of maybe, or maybe we're working through all kinds of different challenges. Those things still exist, but because of all that change, we can change, but we're still doing what we do best in the world, which is developing leaders. And so as you go back and you start looking into your business, that's the last slide for this, right, Mark? Or is there one more slide? Is it the questions that's next? I'm sorry. I normally had the other screen
Sorry,
with it.
questions that are next.
Okay, good. We'll get to the questions in just a second here. Yeah, so you can actually go to the questions, because that's where I'm going to be landing this plane, if you will. Here's one thing. I'm gonna read this here. That's a really good quote here. Good to great companies set their goals and strategies based on understanding. Remember, it's not we have a goal and a strategy and that's our Hedgehog concept. No, we understand. We have that realization of what's happening here. And because we know that, we can actually set goals and strategies based on that understanding, right? All right. Comparison companies set their goals and strategies based on bravado. What do they think that they're good? Where did we find success in something? And so my goals and strategies are not about my drive-through or customers coming into my business. My goals and strategies around investing in my leaders. Investing in my leaders. And no matter how much we change the rest, it's doing that. So that's kind of a little bit, that's a lot to talk about here. So at the end of the day, with the hedgehog concept, it's understanding what's your one big thing. What do we really do well? What can we be best in the world at? And then you stick to it and you don't change that. You know, I don't remember who it was, but talking earlier about telling stories, a creative storyteller, creative writer. If that's what you're best in the world at, you stick to it. How you tell stories, where they go, how they get developed, all of those things, they can change. They can change all the time. But hey, we're going to be great at this story. That's what we do. We do it better than anyone else. That becomes a hedgehog concept. I'm not saying that has to be the hedgehog concept, but that's what it becomes. So I'm going to kind of mention these questions here as we talk about that intersection. And Mark, this is such an expensive thing. After I kind of lay these out, if I'm missing anything and you need to help complete the picture on any of this, please do. But there's really only 3 questions to ask yourself. What are you deeply passionate about? And I say deeply, it's just as, what are you passionate about? I say deeply because I think that deep conviction is really important. What are you deeply passionate about? What drives your resource engine? So that's the reality. Hey, what's actually going to keep this thing moving and going? As some of you talked earlier, hey, it's hard to be a Christian and be a businessman because I want to impact lives and I want to do all these things, but you have to face the reality. Guess what? If all I do is invest in lives at the expense of my business, at the economic engine here, then I'm only going to limit the influence that I have. I don't want to write somebody off. I don't want to not invest in people, but I'm talking about using wisdom, which is a very godly thing to do, using wisdom, godly wisdom, in deciding how do I resource and how do I keep this business moving? What's my economic engine? What's keeping things going? And then what can I be the best in the world at? And where those 3 circles interact, that's the goal. All right, Mark, what am I missing?
Nothing, but let me add a couple of bits. It's not missing. I'm so passionate about this, I end up wanting to put in my topics. But I would just say this, for me, is the most important thing in terms of creating strategy. How do you turn that vision into an actionable plan? How do you choose what to do? It's answering these 3 questions. And the crazy thing is, when you read those 3 questions, well, this is obvious. Yeah, of course. But so many organizations don't think this stuff through. So if you can work this stuff through and figure out, like Caleb says, what is in the sweet spot, it's not just answering the 3, it's what is in the intersection of all of them. That's where you want to focus and keep doing that one thing. And this is where I said it takes time and it's frustrating. I'd love you to be able to do this in one afternoon. And Jim Collins says most of those great organizations took about 3 years to work that out. And you think that's ridiculous. These are simple questions. How does it take that long? I don't know why. It does. We're slow as human beings, you know. So don't beat yourself up. Don't get too frustrated if you're like, oh, I don't have it nailed. I don't have a clear hedgehog by the end of this meeting. Keep reflecting on it, and it takes years, but you'll gain huge clarity in it. And then the other one thing I would add is just on that resource engine. This is why this is so profound. It applies not only to businesses, but to nonprofits as well. And so for a business, obviously, what is it that drives the resource engine? It's sales. You know, it's selling chicken sandwiches or chicken salads or, you know, waffle fries. That's what Caleb is, you know, that's what's keeping him in business. But for a ministry, it might be slightly different. It might be, you know, if you're, say, a child sponsorship organization, then obviously what is it that drives the resource engine? It's people sponsoring children. You know, it's recognizing that sort of stuff. But for a ministry, it's probably not only money. Money is a part of it, and you need the money, like Caleb says, to keep the lights on, but it might be volunteers. So for us as One Rock, a big part of our resource engine is mentors, people that volunteer to become coaches and mentors on the training that we're doing. We can't do this stuff without them. So what is it that brings in more mentors and coaches for us as an organization, that's a big part of our resource. So it includes money, but it's not only money if you're a nonprofit. But it's still those three profound questions. And that's why I think this is so incredibly important, whether you're a business or a nonprofit, a charity, a church, whatever. If you can answer these three questions and figure out what unites them and then do that thing, you will be able to grow the organization and have a huge impact. That's my tuppence. It's probably more like 5p.
Wonderful. That was excellent. Thank you for summing that up. So I think it's reflective time now, guys. Ask these questions to yourself. And I would encourage, just like Mark said, remember, if you haven't already been thinking about this, you're not going to answer this today. Or you may think you can answer this today, but I can promise you, mine changed. So my core values haven't changed, but this has evolved and has become only clear in the last 2 years for me. I've been in business for myself nearly 10. It has taken a long time to get here. It's stages. Who, then what? And so don't feel like you have to have this figured out. I would encourage you, as you reflect, maybe ask questions that can help you clear up this picture as you are on your journey, wherever you're at. And so think through these, ask yourself these questions. They're tough. Okay. I think we are getting close to that 5-minute mark. So questions or feedback on the Hedgehog. I know this is actually, in one hand, a simple concept, and in another one, it's incredibly complex. It's simple in the fact that it is clear what needs to happen. It's complex in getting there sometimes because it means that you have to sometimes say no to good things and really have clear vision where you're at. So I just want you guys to understand that as we walk into this, if I somehow make this sound like an easy, simple process, it is not. But it is simple in terms of you can understand this, you can do it. It just takes a lot of work. Okay, questions, feedback, can't wait. And of course, if your mic doesn't work, feel free to put something in the chat as well. Elvis, do you have a question?
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you for this session. Could you talk about so I would say two things. Um, the individual journey to where you came to realize that leadership development was the thing that you were passionate about. In brief, how you got able to got down to that one thing, and secondly, yeah, as Christians, what is the role of prayer? I look at this as finding a life partner. It's it's a it's a it's a big decision, and there's so many things you can look at. But I see the spiritual guidance, the Holy Spirit's guidance in choosing a life partner, something maybe that could be at play here. But could you talk about also the importance of prayer, of that guidance
Yeah,
God provides?
super. I can address both of those. Those are great questions. Uh, as far as how did I get to leadership development, it really is something that evolved over time. I realize it's not that it's changed. That call, that what I'm passionate about is also kind of what I feel called to do. And where it
Yeah,
began is when I was a younger man, when I was emerging into the world. I realized it started with a desire to help others. And then that desire turned into, well, I want to make others better in whatever way I can, whether I'm serving them, helping them, however I can do it. I want them to be better, even if it's just training them at Chick-fil-A to be a better employee. I want to help them be better.
yeah,
And then over time, I realized that's where the desire started. But what I've realized is where it got focused was that I really wanted them to be better at leading, whether it was leading themselves or leading others. And that's kind of where it landed. I realized that's something I'm passionate about. I learn it. It stays on my mind, and it's something I can quickly share with others. I can have deep conversations with others about it, and I have found that when I am able to function in that lane, and I see that life change. As we talked about earlier, there are people that will betray you. You invest that time, and they will go the opposite direction. But for many that you invest in, and they begin to change, to grow as leaders, that is the deepest satisfaction I've ever had as an individual, because I feel like I'm carrying out what God's called me to do.
yeah,
And so that's when I realized, kind of hit the bell, and realized, hey, that's it. That's what I'm deeply passionate about. And so it was a process. I didn't wake up one day and know it was that specific and that clear. It
yeah,
began with me just identifying the fact that I wanted to help others. And your other question of prayer, I like to, when I'm coaching my leaders, I have almost 100 employees. And so we have a very diverse group, and some of them are not Christians, but many of them are. And what I love to share with my leaders that work for me that are Christian and are open to this conversation is that I feel like as believers, we have an advantage. And that advantage is the Holy Spirit. And if we are sensitive to the Holy Spirit and his role in our lives and in our business, the thing is my business is not a church, but my business is driven by my relationship with Christ as much as it is anything else. Yes, I'm passionate about leadership development, but because of my faith, it is a major influence in how I do business. And so when I am picking people to be on that bus, when I'm deciding this hedgehog concept, you better believe I am praying very strategically about these things, because I believe I have an advantage as a believer. I get to pray and ask for God's guidance. I get to ask for his help. When I am lost for words, when I am lost for direction, when I don't understand what I need to do, sometimes I need to get to work, and God will let me work those moments out. And that God will let me kind of struggle and realize I may need to read a book or talk to someone and get a mentor. And then there's other times where that's not the problem. It's literally a moment that I've got to lean in and rely on Jesus, on the Holy Spirit to guide me and to help me understand what I need to do. And prayer is significant in these decisions, because when I say I want to build community and develop leaders, it's not for my accolades. It's not because I have a list on a wall of people that I've helped become successful, developing operators or launch into other things. Instead, I think about the eternal impact on their lives.
Yeah.
And I think about that. And so as I'm praying and as I'm deciding on what this is, yes, I am executing this in a business, but I think it's a place that I'm executing God's call in my life.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like it answers it in the fact that I think there's also that patience needed when you talk about how long I've been on a personal journey to get to that place where I find my vision and I realize prayer is very important to do at least what you it's nice to hear that you've been on this journey for 10 years and you've had to focus on the stage at each stage and do what you have to do. So that's encouraging.
Certainly. I know it looks like Jocelyn has her hand raised, and then Pastor Christian also posted a question. Let me address the question on the chat first, and then Jocelyn, you can get ready to speak. Pastor Christian asked, I'm running a capacity building company and a ministry. In both places, I'm dealing with some people I brought in my bus, but later I realized that I did a wrong decision and they will never achieve my expectations. The worst is that they do not care about that. What can I do? I think you have almost answered your own question, Pastor Christian. This is the place where we talked about on the bus, where you have to make quick people decisions. In this case, it sounds to me, I don't have full context, but it sounds to me like this is a very clear understanding that now not only are they the wrong people on the bus, but they don't even care. It can be challenging when they care, but when they don't care, I think the clear question or the clear answer to that is you have to make the tough decision as a leader. And as a leader, our job isn't to make everyone happy. That is a falsehood. If that is your goal, you're going to make many people unhappy in that process. My encouragement to you is, especially if you know they are the wrong people on the bus, and especially if you know they don't care, move them on to somewhere else. Either they're in the wrong seat or they're not right for your organization. And I would make a decision sooner than later. Jocelyn.
Hello. I really appreciate your time and to, I guess, to give us your knowledge and wisdom of the information we're getting here. Well, I'm in Canada, and I'm a Rwandan. I've been in Canada for over 20 years. Unfortunately, I don't know if I could put my video, but I'm in a situation where maybe I shouldn't. I'm in the middle with my daughter and painting my house, so it's crazy. So forgive me.
All right.
My question, or looking for suggestion tips. I am one of the co-founders of the organization, my twin sister and I, and Jewel, who is a part of this chat. I have a little bit of challenge of running an organization that founded in Rwanda. Activities are all in Rwanda. So we do support children, orphans, and street kids, provide them with first basic of life, and then give them tools, education, and in adults, give them tools and resources to become self-sufficient, which is wonderful. But the challenge I have is having the activities run in Rwanda, but in Canada, having the main fundraising funds to fund the activities in Rwanda. So we do have two boards, Rwanda and Canada. So I would say we're two companies in one. So talking about the bus, which I love so much, the example, which is great. The challenge is getting these two, I'll say, company sisters having the same culture understanding, having have that unity of understanding the vision, but within the vision, there's these little activities that maybe one may understand better than the other, but at the same time, you need each other. Rwanda can't exist without really the support, either financially and any other way, or the fundraisers, the funds can exist without activities. So I would say it's a God, one God, but there's Holy Spirit, Son, and the Father in one. So what is your suggestion, tips and suggestion when it comes about working two organizations and running boards and having that one understanding without colliding with each other?
Well, that sounds like a real tough problem. that is a challenge I think many people face. I definitely don't think that's not something that's uncommon. The way I would relate to it would be, in my organization, I have different leaders that are at the top level that I call directors, and they may oversee training and development, hiring, and of talent and HR type things, marketing, and then maybe operations. So I think about those things. Those are 4 different buckets, but they coexist, but they all have different responsibilities at the end of the day, right? I mean, an operations versus a marketing person, their jobs look very different. The responsibilities are very different. But another key thing that brings them all together is that, hi there.
Hi,
is
there
that
now.
I see the mission is the same. And she said, the key thing he says, how do we unify everyone? And I think it's always going back and reminding everyone, hey, let's be clear on what our mission, our vision, whatever it is that we're going towards. This is where I don't know if a Hedgehog Concept exists for 2 organizations together, but maybe each one's got their own, and those concepts have to work collectively to one vision. Mark, and you feel free to kind of help answer any of this as I kind of go through it. But the way I look about it in my mind is you have to be able to respect the uniqueness of each organization and each responsibility, because those that are in Rwanda versus those that are back home in Canada, they have different responsibilities. They have different strengths, different giftings. And so understanding that each one's going to have kind of a different, maybe Hedgehog Concept, I don't know if that's the right term exactly, but kind of that different gifting, that different strength. And it's all about communication and I think vulnerability, and then acceptance of, hey, I know this is what you're good at, and I'm going to let you be good at that. And I'm not going to try to tell you how to do that. And then in return, we're not going to do that, but we will challenge each other because we're all trying to get to the same destination. We want the same success.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push you, I'm going to challenge you, but I'm also going to allow you to do what you do best. Does that kind of answer your question at all?
Absolutely, that sounds great.
It's a tough issue. Go ahead, Mark.
You want me to? So I face much of that challenge myself. So as One Rock, we have a board in the UK and a board in the US. So part of the way in which we solve that, let me throw out some things, is we would describe ourselves as one organization.
Right.
We have 2 different boards, but it's one organization. So it's one hedgehog at the moment. Now, within that, I think clarity of communication and role is essential. So the UK board has to know what are they responsible for, which is actually all of our global ministry. The US board knows what are they responsible for, which is any work we do in the US or Canada. That's their jurisdiction. If anything is happening there, they need to be on board with it, that they have responsibility for it. But anything outside of US and Canada is the international board, which is based in the UK. So creating that clarity immediately helps and tries to limit any of the potential conflicts of people saying, hang on, no, you can't do that. Well, no, that's not your decision to make. It's this board that makes that decision. But also, I would go back to the first principle of the preserve the core, stimulate progress. And what is it that's essential for us as One Rock that remains constant across both boards and any other jurisdiction where we start to, you know, create another board, etc. What is it that is, hey, if you're part of One Rock, this is our DNA, these are our values, this is our vision, this is our core purpose. And then other stuff, yes, by all means, be a bit more creative. So, and we're not at that place yet, but maybe as we start to get more active in the US, and we'd love to start running an institute in the US, everything is slowed down by the pandemic. We're probably, you know, in 2022, we'll get there. Maybe that will become so unique that it almost becomes its own hedgehog. That team will start to think more individually, but it would still be within the core of what we've said. This is who we are, but yes, stimulate the progress. So I don't know if that helps.
Thanks, Mark. I may have to call you later. I'm just joking.
Can I add to that? Is that okay? For those who have not seen me, I look obviously very tired, so I am switching off the camera.
You look good with your green.
But I'm married to Mark, and I just wanted to say something on these boards. I think maybe what helps in England, at least from my limited understanding, is that I don't think it's possible to have boards that are of equal power, that one board needs to be an international board, so to say. It has to be, the bag has to start with somebody. So even though we have two boards and we are one organization, the US board is definitely subordinate to our UK board, because the UK one is original board that we have started, and they have more of a say in terms of the international strategy, so to say. And I think that the important thing is, and sometimes it's difficult, but I think it's important how we recruit people to the boards and how clearly we communicate with them what are the expectations and what are not the expectations. And so our board in the United States, it's a little bit more relaxed in terms of, for example, some of them, I mean, we do everything legally. I'm not saying this, that we are illegally, legally relaxed, but we don't have meetings that look like proper kind of board meetings, while UK one is so structured and we've got such a high level of accountability to our UK board, accountability to every penny that we receive. We even submit to them our hours or what we do throughout the week and throughout the month. They are ultimately our employees. It's very different here in UK because our board can technically fire us. In America, and I don't know how it is in Canada, like we are even on the board. So in America, Mark and I, we participate in voting and, you know, being on the board. In UK, we are not board members because the UK has got such a high level of accountability to the board that when you select board members, you select them with this knowledge, these people can actually fire you, even though you are the funder of an organization. So we do have a subordination a little bit more, but we explain to the US board and we say to them, the reason why we're not going through such a heavy accountability with you is because we already have a board that we are accountable to, and this is your role. And also we have learned throughout the years, like especially here in UK, that we don't have to go for big, you know, people when they first start, especially with boards, they invite really big fish onto the board because you want somebody important on your board with their name that can bring contacts. I find that often doesn't work, especially if we are like small or medium size. You need people willing to do work, not people just who have time to turn up twice a year or 3 times a year and maybe bring contacts, maybe not bring any contacts. So we have walked away from trying to target people who are really, really like top executives because they not really bring much to the board, to be honest. These sort of people are too busy to do any real work. And when you're a small organization, you want a team. And this is another big thing, discern what kind of nature of a board. Are you looking for the board or are you looking for a team? And I think for me and Mark, we are still after 10 years or whatever, I think we are still longing to have a team. but now realizing that actually our board is not our team. It's such an important distinction. Otherwise, I think it's so easy to just become drained by this, because then you get people onto the board who say yes to be on the board, but they don't necessarily want to be volunteers as part of a team. There's a really great book that talks about that. I will look it up and I will put it in the chat. But it's the best book that I have read about how to put boards together and how to administer them. But anyway,
Mark, I want
sorry.
to comment on this just really quickly. One, because we've lived this, I know the relationship between Jocelyn in Canada and Shelter Them here in Rwanda. And Jocelyn, I mean, you know, Serge and I are very available to you because we walked this journey for 18 years with our organization in Canada. And Caleb already mentioned one of the biggest things is that you have to separate roles. Like, what is the role of the board in Canada and what is the role of the organization in Rwanda? And I cannot tell you how important that is, because Canada cannot drive Rwanda. Rwanda has to drive Canada, because this is where the ministry happens. The feet are on the ground here. And this is, this is grassroots. And so when you have, and we see this, I mean, I'm 26 years in ministry here. I see this all across, is that when it's driven from the West, when it's driven outside of the country where the ministry is actually happening, ministry does not happen. And I cannot say that strong. Good things happen, but great things do not happen, because nobody in Canada can say, this is how you're going to sponsor children. This is how you're going to do this. This is how you're going to do that. On this day, we're going to do that. I think we should be doing this. All of that stuff, you can't say. You have to be asking the host country. You have to be asking the country that's there to say, what are we doing? This is who we are. The board sets the values of, what we've been talking about here, right? This is who we are. But as far as how that's flushed out, what that looks like, anybody outside who's raising funds, raising awareness has got to come alongside what's happening grassroots. And I see lots of little young organizations and stuff starting up here. I just cannot say that strong enough. And happy to journey with that with anybody, because I was with an organization that I came in as they were learning that, and it revolutionized how they did ministry around the world. And so I have a little experience in that. Anyways, I'll leave it there. I'm open to talking to anybody, by the way.
I love hearing that passion.
Jocelyn, did you want to come back and say anything more on that?
You
and
were
then
muted,
Gio
Jocelyn.
Has a question that we want to come back to as well. But yeah, Jocelyn, if you wanted to share anything.
Yeah, sorry, I was in the mute. The only thing I'm saying is thank you so much for those who responded to me, to the question, or maybe guidance I was looking from you, from your experience. This means a lot. So Jennifer, I know you. I may have to come to you to pick your brain on that. Mark, definitely, I appreciate that. And I don't remember it was Sarah. The book, I'm gonna wait on that. and see if I can get equipped and have the tools to run the organization the way it needs to be. And Jules, I'm sure he is the key of that van. And I think we'll do good. Thank you so much. Really, God bless you.
I have
to Gilles, yes. Gilles, you had a question.
Yeah, I don't want to talk on this that Justin has just finished to say. It's only question on the hedgehog concept. The three circle here, if you see them, they talk about who you can be, what best you can be at this world, and then what are you possible of doing, and what drives you. And this, as you said, are very important to formulate a strategy. I see something, if maybe let me know if I'm wrong or right, something that is missing, which come from the people you are working for. If you are in business or if you are in a non-profit organization, there are your clients or your beneficiaries whom you are working with, and you have to know their problems. You have to know which I think will drive you to formulate a strategy in order to solve their problems or to bring the solution, which give you a strategy to be able to come to solve their problems. So can you talk a little bit about that, about how the clients or the beneficiaries also influence the strategy, the formulation of a strategy? Thank you.
Sure. You know, I think where it fits is that third circle that says, what drives your economic engine? If you're a nonprofit, your donors are driving your economic engine. If you're running the sponsorship, your sponsors are. It's not the only thing that's part of that engine. Just like sales for me, my customers are driving that. So there's a reality that this has to be based in, and this goes back to why this isn't just principle. This isn't just fluff. This is, okay, how is this shaping my reality? And here's, at the end of the day, if I think I'm best in the world at developing leaders, but those leaders are not creating an incredible experience for my customers, and therefore that those customers are not wanting to come back to my organization, my business, then I'm going to only choke or limit that economic engine or my resource. And so think about this circle, as it shrinks smaller, guess what? It's going to begin to pull away from that sweet spot in the middle. It's going to pull me away from that. And if it pulls me from that spot, that means that at some point it's going to become an anchor for what I'm doing, and I'm not going to be able to move forward. It's going to keep me from doing what I really feel called to do. So if you ignore your customer or your client or whatever external thing that is there, if you completely ignore it and it's not part of the equation, you can get mixed up because they're part of it too. And if what you're doing, if it is creating the value, it's especially in that economic engine circle, if it's creating the value, then your customers are only going to affirm what's happening. And that would look like, in my business, the more I develop my leaders, the better I get at developing them and spending time with them, the more customers want to come and patron and come visit my business because we're getting better at what we do. They are an indicator. They affirm that what I'm doing is the right thing. And if your Hedgehog Concept is the wrong thing, then it will also be affirmed in the opposite way. If there's anything anyone else wants to add to that, that's.
I'm fine. Thanks so much for the clarification. Yeah. It looks like Jocelyn has a hand up again. Go ahead, Jocelyn.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Maybe I pushed that by mistake. No, I think I won't take
right.
so much of your time. I got really good answers.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
If we still have time, maybe I can talk a little bit about what Jocelyn asked, and after Jennifer. When you talk about my organization, I think also starting from where you started with vision and something that we can't change, values and purpose. Sometimes the organizations are born out of passion, out of the problem maybe people want to solve without going into the research and put in place the vision, share it with anyone who is coming in, and make sure that they understand, put in place the core values, those stuff that can't be changed. And you find out that you are driven by just solving the problems, and then you are bringing in the bus or those who is telling you, I'm going to help, I'm going to help you to fix this. And then just, that's what you are just looking at. But after this training, I think there are a lot of things to think about and then try to solve, because having the wrong people in the bus, then at the end you can't be successful. So there are a lot of processes that needs to be done when you didn't start well, so that you make sure that you have the right people and then in the right seats, and then you make sure that the core values are shared and understandable with all the people. And yeah, so I think I'm just want to add on what they have just said. In the context of our organization, and something that we are working on, and try to make sure, and all this training really help. Thank you. I think we can continue, Mark.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Jill. So we have one more principle that we'll share. What we'll do, because of time, we won't do the reflection and the discussion, but we'll share it through. And then, well, the challenge is to be able to continue to reflect on it, obviously, even when we've finished, and to think, how could you start to apply this? Okay, so back to Caleb.
Got you. Do you want, go ahead and pull that screen up there. All right, BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goal out of the clarity of your hedgehog concept. So one thing I want to reiterate is this is a process. It begins with the core, your core values, your core of what you're doing. Who, then what? And when you get to what, then the hedgehog concept comes into play that we just discussed. And then what's the final goal? So remember, the hedgehog concept in itself is not a strategy or a goal. It's an understanding of your reality. But once you understand your reality, then you can set a goal. Because we talk about SMART goals. I think we already talked about those in a different setting, but specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Those may be a little bit different than the words were used, but basically that's what those mean. And so you can't really set a goal if you don't have a good base in reality of where you're at. So the hedgehog concept helps you understand where you're at, what I can do, not just what I want to do, but what I can do. And once I know what I can do, now we can begin to get to work. And when you get to work, and you start perfecting what you're doing. In fact, you are working and finding mistakes and getting through those things, you realize that you begin to build some momentum. And one thing that you can use to help build momentum and drive everything that you're doing. So again, you can't start here, but once everything else is in place, you can really kind of let this become your one of your drivers and motivators. And that's big, hairy, audacious goals. You know, they call it that because it's like, what does that really mean? It just means something that is possibly even unattainable, but absolutely within your grasp. And so that begins to look like, you know, for us here, you know, I've decided my Hedgehog concept is leading or developing leaders. That's my Hedgehog concept. I do it better. That's what I'm best in the world at. My organization's best in the world at doing this. And so the goal that I begin to set, so in 2020, our goal that we set, I say collectively, me and my leadership team that I've invested in, is we wanted to achieve and attain a Mark and Chick-fil-A, a goal or a award called Champions Club. And that's based on profitability and it's based on sales. So remember, the sales and the profit are kind of my economic engine, but they are not the goal. They're not what we're best in the world, that we're best at developing leads. I understand my reality, but I realize if I continue to do that really well, we can now push to this goal of these sales that seem unattainable on one level because we're in a pandemic and we've already experienced growth previously. So now we're in a position where can we continue to grow at a record-setting pace? And so it begins to kind of put pressure on you a little bit and push your team, but it's positive pressure. It's not the kind that's just stressful. It's the kind that really begins to confront you and say, okay, do you have what it takes? Are you going to dig in? Are you going to really get good at this Hedgehog concept and really begin to chase after these things? Because it becomes that motivator of, to me, it begins to beg this question here. What's at stake if I don't do my Hedgehog concept and be the best in the world at it? What's at stake? What do we lose? And what's at stake? What's our reward if we continue to improve and get better at it? And that's where BHAGs come into place. And so they become these monumental goals that we set, these things that once we get the basics of our organization aligned, it's the thing that we can rally the team around. We can get everybody involved. They're inspirational, they're challenging, they're scary sometimes, but they're the things that say, okay, here we go forward. You know, if the thing you're best in the world at is serving underprivileged children in your communities, if that's what you think your organization is the best in the world at, your big, hairy, audacious goal may be, hey, we want to expand to a second community, or we want to double the impact that we've had from year over year. What's that going to take? Well, let me tell you, you're going to have to increase your economic engine. You're going to have to dig deep and let that passion grow. And you're going to have to continue to get best in the world at what you're doing. And guess what? If you don't, that's what's at stake. Your big, hairy, audacious goal. And so it becomes that motivator, that inspiration, the thing that moves you forward. And it's not about just your accolades, your achievement. It becomes about the impact and the influence. And it's something bigger than just a regular goal. It's something that can be life-changing. So I wanted to keep that short because we are over time. Mark, anything to add to that?
Sorry, I keep unmuting and then can't find it on the screen. I guess some examples of that, the classic thing people would say is, well, a BHAG is often, according to Jim Collins, it's something that is maybe, it's going to take you at least 10 years to achieve. He would describe it as 10 years to 25 years. So it's in that framework between vision and plan, you know? So it's not ultimately the vision of why you exist, but it's the big galvanizing thing that is going to get everyone on board and bring excitement. It should be clear and compelling so that when you share it, people are like, wow, that's difficult, that's a challenge, but I'm excited because if we can succeed in this, that would be amazing. That would be so worthwhile. So the classic example that is often used is NASA in the 1960s in America. And remember, the Americans were behind the Soviets at the time in the space race, but JFK in 1961 said, we're going to set a goal that by the end of this decade, we want to put a man on the moon and bring them home safely. And so it was this 10-year thing that galvanized NASA and the American government, military, and people to then make a leapfrog in technology. And we know that they managed to achieve it. And was it July 1969, did what no one had done before and got 2 men on the moon and brought them back safely, and then did other trips there in the early 70s as well. But because that was set, it drove more activity than would have been if JFK had just said, hey, we need to improve our space exploration program. You know, it was the setting of that compelling, crystal clear goal. They can sometimes be shorter. In a sense, actually, during the pandemic, I think our health secretary in the UK kind of set one this time last year when we weren't doing much testing and coronavirus had just begun. And he said, kind of in March was it, he said, by the end of April, or I forget the date last year, we want to be testing 100,000 people a day within the UK. And at the time we were testing less than 10,000 people. And everyone said, that's ridiculous. You're never going to be able to do that within 45 days to massively increase that capacity of testing. But they did. And it was partly because he set and committed to that goal. It galvanized everyone to say, right, what can I do to be able to ensure that we hit that? And then obviously they exceeded that and started to test, I think it's several 100,000 a day, you know, and we're still doing that, which is hopefully helping us in the fight against coronavirus. So that was a BHAG that was a much more shorter time frame. And that's rare, but I guess because it was a crisis situation, and he's speaking on behalf of the government, he can pull everything together in that way. Normally, it's going to be a much longer time frame, but it's hopefully something that is going to inspire you and is going to inspire, obviously, people working in your organization, but other supporters or customers or whoever are your other stakeholders to say, wow, I'd love to be part of that. We're still, in a sense, working out what our BHAG is as One Rock, but kind of our working title, Progress One at the moment, is to put institutes in every major city around the world. And when we first discussed this with our board a few years ago, we were saying, well, so by 2030, we would want to be running so many institutes. And one of our trustees challenged us and said, okay, that's kind of your 5-year goal, but that's not your BHAG. Your big, hairy, audacious goal is surely within like 15 years, you want to be achieving that in every major city around the world. And we could discuss about what is a major city. Is it, you know, city that's got, say, 1 million population or more, or whatever. But, you know, we had that and we're like, wow, okay, that's big and hairy. That's scary, but that's exciting. Okay, yes, that's where we want to head to. So, yeah, I think that's enough for me. Caleb, anything else you want to come back to? And then we can share the question. Or, well, and so, yeah, I suppose the obvious question, let me bring that slide up, is, so what would your BHAG be? What is the goal that you would want to set for your organization that would require maybe 25 years? And that's a bit of an arbitrary thing. Maybe it's a shorter time frame of 10 years, but maybe it is that long. It has to be something that is incredibly worthwhile to pursue. But often where success is not guaranteed, it's like, wow, if we could achieve that, that would be amazing. But it's obviously not something so easy or taken for granted that you know you're going to do it. It's going to push you. And this is the crucial thing, it needs to be set from the understanding of the Hedgehog concept. So almost don't try creating the BHAG until you have more clarity on that, because otherwise you're pushing yourself in the wrong direction or you're setting yourself up for failure. It's got to come from that. And Collins describes it a quiet place of humility. It's not bravado, it's humility of recognizing, yeah, we couldn't be the best in the world or our community at this, this, and this. But actually this, when we look at who we've got on the bus and the people on the team, yeah, this is probably what we're uniquely best gifted in. We could be best at that. We're really passionate about this. And it's bringing us in resource and people or money or whatever it is. So once you've got that clarity, right, what would be the big, hairy, audacious goal that we want to work towards that's going to galvanize others?
I think the word that comes to mind for me, Mark, is conviction. You know, is there enough conviction in you and this team that you will pursue this worthwhile goal? And if you got close, that means you're still going to do a ton of good, but because it's not guaranteed for success. But are you, because conviction is what's going to keep you driving. Am I convicted to pursue this goal year after year after year until we either we get there or we crash right before we get to the finish line? That's fine, but we want to cross it if we can.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, I think we've come to an end. Thank you so much for staying with us. I know that some people have had to leave, and obviously we've recorded this so we can send you the link to it, but thank you for those who have been able to stay with us. We hope that this has been a really fruitful and useful time for you, and know that we're going to be rooting you on, cheering you on in the strategic planning. And I just maybe underline finally, we know this stuff is difficult. It seems so easy, you know, these simple questions, but coming to the answers is hard work, and it requires thinking, it requires experiencing a lot of discussing with the other key people on your bus and all that stuff. And so again, don't be frustrated when you don't have your hedgehog and your BHAG by, you know, midnight tonight. It takes longer than that. Spend a couple of hours reflecting on it and then come back to it next weekend and next month and next year, and keep coming back to it, and you'll find that, and especially be praying in this, God will bring clarity to you if you're seeking him in it. And as you get the clarity, it helps so much, because then you can know, hey, God is shaping the strategy. He's going to lead our organization to fruitfulness, to success, to whatever it is he's calling you to build the kingdom.
Well, thank you, everyone. Yes, Caleb, did you have anything to say? Looks like you had a final remark too, or that's all right.
I am super grateful to be here. Mark summed it up really well. Be patient and have perseverance. Perseverance is the hard work you do after the hard work you've already done. And so persevere as you go through this, because the reward is worth it. I promise.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Caleb, and thank you all the participants. We're coming to the end of this workshop. I learned a lot of things. I hope you all did. And just quickly, a reminder, if you have any follow-up question, please don't hesitate to write to COMEZALife as one word at gmail.com. Just write to COMEZALife@gmail.com with your question or any other, concern or whatever in regard to what we just learned this evening. But also, just as Mark said, we run a leadership academy or institute, as we call it. If you are interested to learn about how to become a mentor, or you want to be mentored, you want to to learn how to grow in whatever you're doing, whatever God has called you to do, also write to that email, and then we will help you and tell you when the next institute will start. Then hopefully you might be interested to join. Otherwise, know that myself and Jennifer, we're here in Rwanda with you guys. Any other question that is regards to these kind of topics, don't hesitate. Feel free to write us, and we are here to help you, and hopefully to, if we can bring any support to whatever God wants you to be involved in or to achieve, we will be more than happy to do that. Thank you, everyone. I have nothing more to add to that, and hopefully we'll see you again, during another workshop. God bless you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Justin.
you, Joanna, for the email.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.